Good Lord.
Day 19. And we
Hmm.
have Jeannie Selda in the house and Adam Laminator in the house.
Something like that, yeah.
Nice. Wow. When did you renovate our basement, sweetie?
Well, I've been working on it all day.
That's super nice that you built that fireplace.
It just shows you what's possible
Really
if you
nice.
don't hold on to any kind of idea of what it's supposed to look like.
So, everyone that's joining us right now, we got a special day because I have my bestie with me and I have my other bestie with me. I'm my two besties. So you guys, we're in Finding Peace in Times of Great Change. We've just finished the embodiment workshop the last day, very powerful. And I'm left with this idea that that a lot has gone on in this world, and everyone in embodiment was feeling it, still going on. And I'd love to hear everyone's word and where you're calling in from. So wherever you're calling in from, put it in the comments. And whatever your word is for the day, make sure you put it over there too. And thank you, everyone who's joining us. Even some of our, isn't that cute? Some of our beautiful participants are there as well in the feed. How cool is that, you guys? So if you took embodiment, thanks for going straight from embodiment to here. Goodness sakes, you're cruising for a bruising.
Yay, Jerry Matera.
Jerry Matera is in the house.
What a love.
So there has been lots of change. Let's just summarize some of the changes we all have witnessed. And because tonight is all about whether we have grieved or haven't grieved, whether we were aware of grieving or not, and how it came about and what we've done about it. And let's just start there. So the end result of tonight is all about how pragmatically do three very different people from very different places, from very different families, actually move through the intensity in this world and give you guys some practical idea of maybe some different ways that you might be able to find freedom from the intensity right now. So, I don't know, have you guys felt like grieving what's happening in the world?
Absolutely.
By the way, in case you didn't know, this is Jeannie Selda and that is Adam Lamb. So
We're kind of interchangeable, I think, at some point.
not even remotely. So God,
I don't know. Jeannie cooks pretty well. I'm just saying.
So, anyways, have you guys have you felt grief? I know, sweetie, you and I have talked about grief. And how did it come up if you did?
So I guess I would start with, certainly felt lots of grief over many times in my life. And I've done a lot of work primarily with men around this idea of actually taking the time to grieve both the big D's and little d deaths, because we're kind of conditioned to just kind of brush that over and just keep continuing. And so my intuition is that unless we can actually acknowledge and honor what ended, we can no longer kind of be present in neither the present or the future. So it's almost like, closing that particular chapter and opening it up. But Jeannie and I were talking about this morning when I said, "Oh, by the way, Jeannie, we're going to do grief and praise," and she's like, "What?" Because it's well, the thing is I think most of us think of grief as kind of this sorrowful thing, and yet when I was exposed to the teachings of Martin Brechtel, he was kind of the first one to actually voice this thing of in every word of grief, there's also a word of praise, right? Because naturally you're actually grieving this thing, and yet there's also this thing where it's, it elevated you in some way, shape, or form, and that's what causes the grief. So if we didn't give a shit, it wouldn't really matter to us. But the fact of the matter is, we can honor that and still kind of find some joy in the grief, if that means anything.
Yeah, but wait a second, sweetie. I want to touch in on like personally for you. It's like you had something happen recently where you felt like maybe your reaction to something might have been an
So you're gonna bring you,
overreaction because you didn't even know. Like, I didn't know I was grieving either. I didn't know that I was anxious. I didn't know that I was grieving. I was over in LA when the whole hurricane hit. And like, I didn't even know what I was grieving. I hadn't driven through. And by the way, this can have to do with the wars. It can have to do with the election. Can have to do with anything. But I'm talking about the hurricane that hit Asheville right now for me. And what happened was I basically had to realize that there was an underlying, overwhelming sense of sadness for this town and these people that I love, and that everyone was in emergency mode, and it caused quite a
well, I remember that quite clearly. And, we hadn't talked for, I think it was like probably day number 4 after being out of power that you and I finally connected. And in that time, I hadn't been exposed to any of the outside influences. Like for me, it was me and Mouse inside the house, and we're like living, breathing, eating, like right in this small space. Like everything became very monocular for me. And you're on the other side of the coast, like
finding out all the things.
right, well, digesting all the videos and all that
Yeah.
stuff. Like it was almost like so much for you. And so, I've been in Florida. I've gone through 5 hurricanes. My daughter Senna was born, the day before Hurricane Andrew came ashore. Thank you, Mouse. There he is.
Here, I'll put on mute. You keep talking.
And that there was just something about this particular incident that affected me on a much different level, and where I became kind of like in the moment to the next moment to the next moment. My experience of connecting with you is like you're all up there in the ethers with everything that's going on, and like, oh my god, and like trying to connect everything and connect resources, and all I'm trying to figure out is like I need to boil water tomorrow for my breakfast, right? So we had these 2 very different experiences, and yet like I like somehow I think it was worse for you than it was for me. I'm making that story up, but it wasn't until several weeks later. As a matter of fact, probably a week ago, we were out dinner with very dear friends. As a matter of fact, she was one of the participants a couple days ago, sharing, and she just kind of shifted her seat. She said, "So, Adam, how you doing with the trauma?" Trauma. What are you talking about? Trauma. Like I hadn't even like acknowledged it so deep down, like actually let it out in such a way. And she said, well, I just know that there are some of us that are not okay, and that's okay. And from there, it was more about, we live very, very close to a small town that was completely wiped off the map. It's a place where, Jennifer and I drive down every Sunday to ride our bicycles. And about a week later, after the hurricane, I drove down there. There's one particular house I really love. It's like this multi-million-dollar construction. It's right on the side of the river with all these concrete posts. And I missed it because I drove right past it, because all that was left was like a piece of privacy fence with a sign that said private property, do not enter. And like to experience something on a TV or a video is one thing. And then when you're kind of like outside and like it's your entire perspective from 3, like you can't get away from it. To me, that was kind of scary because I couldn't get away from it. I couldn't deny it. And it was like, okay. And yet there's this kind of survivor's guilt of like, okay, so we didn't have that much wrong. Like I had a couple trees go down, like really shouldn't have to like be kind of conditioned for grief or any of that stuff. And yet I understood that like being part of this community meant opening my heart such that I let all that in, because it was important for me to be able to connect with, Pope, who, him and his 70-year-old wife are going down to their community pool to get 5-gallon buckets to flush their toilets, or some folks driving by and just, handed me off a box of fresh veggies, even though I didn't really have a way to, like, it was just all these things that were happening. That was like, I tried to limit my exposure. I didn't want to get on the street. I didn't want to do anything. I'm like, okay, I can deal with this. Like, I'm okay with it.
But then we went out to dinner with some friends.
Well, that's what I meant. Yeah.
And it wasn't until we went out to dinner with our friends and it's like one of our friends asked you,
Yeah.
it's like, has this affected you? And before we go any further, I want to, and then all of a sudden you're like, shit, maybe that's why I overreacted to this, or that's why
Well,
I'm
I overreacted, in several different ways, in preceding 10 days. And I hadn't really given it any,
Yeah.
like I thought I was okay.
Yeah.
And that the way I was showing up in these particular situations, one of which was including you, and a business partner that I was in partnership with. And I completely was kind of very reactionary and very harsh. And I didn't even give it any thought until like when she asked me that question, I'm like, oh
Yeah,
shit.
maybe
So
that's why.
maybe,
Yeah, I
maybe
know.
I'm acting out in PTSD without actually acknowledging that I have PTSD.
And
And so,
you should have had
yeah.
PTSD because you saw a lot. But I want to go over to Jeannie for a
Well,
second.
wait. So what I wanted to say about this whole idea about grief and praise is that, the community that we were is worthy of grief,
Yes.
because it's changed.
Mhm.
And yet I also feel like a weird sense of hope and aspiration, because I saw the way everybody was coming together. And like I responded in an email, nobody asked me who I was voting for when they, wanted to drop off 5 gallons of water, or, asked me to, fill up their tap or whatever. Like that didn't come into a conversation. Like on the ground where we are,
Yeah.
there's no separation at all. The only
Yeah.
separation is what we're creating
Yeah.
in the moment, because they look differently or whatever. I got to tell you, there were people out the night of the hurricane on the major roads in their pickup trucks with their chainsaws cutting trees just so people could get by on the major.
Could get
Nobody
home.
asked them. They
Yeah.
like nobody's
They
paying
just did
them.
it. Yep.
They just did it.
Yep.
So
Pretty
there's
awesome.
there's a part that I celebrate, and there's a part that I grieve, and I understand that those are like so enrichly twisting that in order, like I can't separate the two, nor should I. Like I should be able to celebrate both of those at the same time.
Mhm.
And I'm in with that. Thank you very much. And now over to you, Jeannie.
And
No, you just don't get to be pretty in the background going,
Wow. Just wow.
wow. Wow. So, Selda, like what's your relationship to grief at this point around all the things? I mean, you've even driven around Nashville with us. But what's your relationship to, it doesn't even have to be grieving that. I mean, what's your relationship to realizing that we only grieve things that at some point we praised or we appreciated? Because really, what's the point of grieving if you didn't appreciate or feel good about something? Like you just left your kids off at university. You just left the whole thing of motherhood. You're changing that whole thing, that whole relationship.
Well, it was really interesting because probably about a month ago, I got sick. Like I just had the worst flu virus that had me bedridden in bed for like a couple of weeks, and I couldn't do anything. I wasn't hungry. All I could do was sleep. And what I noticed from that for myself was, it really activated the identities of the good mom, the good wife, the good friend, the good worker or whatnot, because I literally could not do anything. So what I watched, for myself was like all these identities that I I have actually seen as important. Like it was really, really important to my personality. Like it's, being able to, like being busy equals worthiness. Being able to provide or always be there for my kids is, computes to being a great mom, making dinner and being a part of the family and taking the dogs out for a walk is a good wife, and connecting with my husband. I was sleeping in my son's bedroom for a couple of weeks. So for me, I found for this grief, it was a bit different because I can see that there was more of just almost a grieving of the old ways of being for myself. and my old identities, and my ego was definitely kicking and screaming, for sure. It's like it wanted to be relevant. It wanted to be useful. It wanted to do something, because for myself, I'm just not used to being in bed all day, much less for 2 weeks. So I think on the other side,
Did Peter bring you bonbons?
yeah, he made me soup. The
Oh,
kids,
so that's even more so. It's like not
yeah,
only are you not being the identities,
yep.
but Peter is literally doing the
Oh,
things.
Well,
it was
I think she's actually coined him Mr. Bonbon. At this
Wow. Just
I will
wow.
not share that on this session, but yeah,
TMI, Jeannie.
it was really this exercise in surrendering, and this exercise of receiving. But my personality was having a total hissy fit, and from that, as soon as I got better, it almost felt like there was this void, because it's almost like this blank slate of who am I without my identities? And especially because it's been such a well practiced habit of, you know, this is how I am a good mom. This is what I do to be an awesome wife. And I found myself kind of in this very unfamiliar space of, who am I without these identities, and what does it mean to be completely loving myself up, without having to do anything? I guess for myself, it's like it's better to give than to receive. So especially with all the stuff that's been happening, with worrying about, like, again, I was carrying and worrying about everything in the US, and and my friends here in Asheville and whatnot. And it's like, what does it look like to just be love? And my ego was saying, like, that's just not enough. And at the same time too, I am just so incredibly grateful and excited for what is unfolding. But it's definitely not in the busyness, because my well-practiced habit is just like, okay, what can I do? What can I say?
Yeah.
How much more, like, what can we create? Now my body feels like
Spaciousness, man.
spaciousness, lots and lots of walks, and really, really honoring what's presenting. And that's definitely an exercise in self-love.
Well, totally. And like I've found the grieving of everything, like the grieving, even of my role in TWA.
Yes,
It's
that
like
too.
my role in TWA, it's like now I'm at the point of no longer grieving it. I'm actually craving the spaciousness of what's next and the simplicity. So it's almost like Asheville is this metaphor. It's like all the decks got cleared. And I get the pain myself of what's gone on. But at the same time, there's a meeting in the middle of December that I was just asked to come to that's kind of like about creating what's next. Aditi and her group are all, it's like, how do we recreate? So that's what grief does to me. And we'll finish up on this note. But what grief does in my world is it clears the decks. It makes the canvas blank so that you can create what it is that you desire from there. And yeah, it's pretty powerful. So you guys remember, as Adam said at the beginning, that I think is really important as we go from tonight. Adam, is there?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there's, like, to have the slow burn, like when Lori says to me, oh, how's the trauma? And I'm like waking up out of my stupor almost like after several weeks, like, oh shit, yeah, I just went through something. Like maybe I actually need to, like,
Yeah.
create a ritual, like,
Yeah.
actually acknowledge it, like, not pretend that it didn't happen. Right? We're not going to pretend that the election didn't happen. We're not going to pretend like as much as we want to put our head in the sand, the fact of the matter is the world continues on. And either we're going to be a part of it in whatever small way we can be, or we're going to give our power away to somebody else. That's what I love so much about that. I shared that Maori kind of there's a video going around about they were doing a particular, they were trying to water down this Indigenous rights bill in the New Zealand Parliament, and a couple of Maori women who were representatives did a kana right in the middle of the, like they just started doing the war dance right in front of everybody. And I thought, oh my God, like to actually just like recognize that in our own way, we have the power, and the time is now to actually stand in that power. But you can't do that without acknowledging that there's an end to a certain part,
Yes.
and then there's a beginning of another. And so to
Yep.
acknowledge that and actually embody that in whatever ritual works for you. Yeah. And I don't know if it's an ability to process it more swiftly, but I do know that I'm willing to sit in the fire until it burns off everything that's not love. And then I'll get out of the fire.
Yep.
Amen, Lamb. Amen.
Yippee. Oh. And so one of the things that we started today is, this Martin Prachtel idea of praise and grief go together, because that which we praise is what we grieve, because you have to love it in order to have that sense of, like, you have to have loved it or them or whatever it is, or the role or whatever, in order to have the grief, right? So understand that it's almost like a beautiful acknowledgement of that which you adore, to actually go through that process of grief. And I want everyone to know, thank you for joining this conversation with two wonderful people in my life. And thank you for being a part of the 21 days to finding peace in great times of great change. I also want you to know that we have a great guest tomorrow. And today we finished off our embodiment talking about Reset and Renew, which is a program that we're doing that really all is about clearing the decks, exactly what we're talking about, clearing the decks of everything that has been, so that we actually can create anew. It's a 2-part program that's very affordable, and it allows everyone to be able to do exactly what we talked about tonight. Find the blank slate on which to create. So everyone, if you can find us on YouTube and listen to all the past 21 days, there are some excellent tools. Make sure you go and check that out. It's fantastic. There are tools that you can use in your everyday. We did this because we just wanted to help us all through, including our own selves, through these times of such incredible intensity. So appreciative of you guys being here. So appreciative of you guys being a part of this unfolding miracle of 21 days. Thank you so much for sharing them. Share your favorites with your friends. Post them on all your pages. You can come to facebook.com/Wide Awakening, or LinkedIn.com/Jennifer Huff, or you can go to our Wide Awakening YouTube page to watch these live. Bring a friend. Let's have the conversation. Let's keep moving through and building bridges. And I can't wait to see you tomorrow. Thank you, Adam and Jeannie, for just being the awesomeness that you are.
Grateful to be here. Thank you.
Me too.
Love you.
Love you.